So just a quick update on some of the changes I'm starting to make to the cockpit. If you've got a keen eye, you should spot quite a few changes. The most obvious changes are I've got two screens mounted. They're not powered up yet, but they're mounted in the cockpit. I've just literally finished doing that about 10 minutes ago. These are Dell, just to remind you, 16:10 monitors, 19.5 inch, and I'm fairly happy with how they're mounted so far. Now I haven't powered them up yet. These are IPS monitors, so the viewing angle should be adequate. For the instruments, this one should be no problem because it's pretty much square on to me. The monitor over at the side here, which is intended primarily for the engine instruments, the angle is going to be a bit more critical on that one. I hope it's going to be okay. If it's not, I don't know, I'm going to have to tinker with it and change something about how it's mounted, which won't look as good. You know, it's nice at the moment. They're flush with the dash. They're parallel. Well, they're not quite parallel, but we won't go into that. So there we are. That's going to be the main difference that you'll notice as you look at the cockpit. I had to remove my dash for the moment. The dash doesn't fit because this monitor protrudes. The dash sits along the top of this one by design, but this one protrudes up by about 5 or 6 centimeters. So I've got to modify the dash for that. I'm not bothered about that. That's it's kind of realistic in a sense because it gives me some scope for being able to look over the top of the instrument panel, and there's more to see. It doesn't obscure too much of the vertical field. Don't forget, we don't have too much vertical resolution to play with, so we don't want it to be too intrusive. I've yet to modify the mounting of the yoke. Now we've got a centimetre, just over a centimetre's clearance between the shaft and the monitor, which is fine. It's just how I wanted it. But the yoke can't go fully forward without bumping into the monitor at the moment, so I've got to basically move the yoke forward by an amount that I've yet to determine, which means I've got to extend the table out a little bit. Not quite sure how I'm going to do that without dismantling everything, but we'll get there. What else can you notice? Well, those with a keener eye will notice that the panel that was mounted here, obviously it's gone. Rather than ditch that panel, I've put it up here. To do that, I've moved the start panel from over here to the left hand side, which is a fairly reasonable place for the start panel to be. It means I have to operate the flaps with my left hand instead of my right hand, or cross over, but everything else makes sense for it to be there. You know, just some words on how I constructed this cockpit in the first place, because it's really been helpful. First of all, I made these panels in a kind of modular form. Everything pretty much is in multiples of 15 centimeters. So this panel is 15 high, 60 wide. The square panels are 30 by 30. This one's 15 centimeters by 30. Having them all built to that sort of grid system, if you like, means that you can actually take them out and swap them around without too much trouble, and that's what I've done. This panel up here I think is going to be workable. It's not ideal, you know, the fire panel being there I've no problem with. The autopilot, I mean, it lets me use the autopilot without having to build another panel, which is what I thought I was going to have to do. I've tried flying it around a little bit and it works fine. It's just when you go for the autopilot, because I'm using the track IR, the view tends to pan up and down, which is a little bit ugly. Again, a slight compromise. We've got the seat height position control up here. Ideally that will be down on the dash. I've managed obviously to keep the speakers that are mounted in here, which I use for the ATC, which and particularly when I'm flying on Pilot Edge, which I'm going to start doing a lot more of soon. The sound isn't quite as good with the speakers up there, but you know, it's doable. Just have to have it a little bit louder. And the volume control, again, it's up there, but it is to hand. So that works fine. I'm probably going to get away without having to build a new autopilot panel, and I get to keep the fire panel. And the full start panel, as I say, I've just had to move that one, you know. And well, another thing about modularity and design, I made these panels, you may or may not remember, to be detachable. So they're all connected by umbilical cables connected with these RS232 connectors. Hopefully you can see those. This is for the fuel panel and the weather radar. These are not connected at the moment. And of course that means you can take them off, work on them, move them around, move them out of the way without having to faff about at the Bodner board end and remove all the wires. Now that said, this little panel caused me a lot of trouble because the umbilical wasn't long enough, so I've had to take that and lengthen it by 1 metre. But it's fine, it works great. So just, you know, again, if you're going to do this kind of thing, all my Bodner boards are mounted behind this wall here. I probably would have done well to design my umbilicals so that they all stretched from there to the furthest possible extremity of the cockpit. But there you go, you live and learn. That's the only modification I had to do. So I've removed the 2 radios that were up here. These were the Elite radios. One of them is the ComNav 1, which is kind of redundant because I've got that on the GNS 530, and I've also got a Cytec panel which is not connected at the moment either. Come on to that in a minute. But the transponder panel, I really do want that back in the cockpit, because again, flying on pilot edge, you need the transponder, and the Cytec panel, even if I remount that, the transponder setting on that is a real bit of a pain in the backside. I'm hoping the transponder, Elite transponder module, I'm not sure if you'll see this on the video, you won't. Just below this monitor and to the right, there's a gap which is big enough to just sit that transponder or mount that transponder down there, and that's a good place for it, you know, it's right to hand. So we'll be doing that, and I can probably put the ComNav radio in the equivalent position on the other side as well. We'll have to see how that goes. The Cytec panel, where I had the VR Insight multi-panel mounted up here on the top of the throttle cords, I don't think I'm going to put that back because I don't use it, and you know, it's just there for show really. So what I might do is mount the Cytec radio panel up there. I mainly use that for COM2 honestly, but you can use it for, I can use it for NAV2 as well, and whatever I want, because that Cytec's, you know, it's obviously configurable. What else can I tell you? I've taken down this monitor that was above my head for now. I may put that back. I haven't been using that. I was going to use that for FS Commander and for Sky Vector. Now I haven't been using that mainly because you have to start up a separate computer to run that. Of course, when I get these panels up and running, that second computer is going to have to be running anyway. Now I was able to mount these monitors very easily, in fact, and this is a good reason. All things being equal, buying a Dell monitor is a good idea, and the reason for that is that Dell has a mounting system on most of its, well, I can't say most of its monitors, but certainly common on its monitors, which allows you to easily detach the monitor from the stand just by pressing a button, and it comes off. And I've used that original mounting plate in each case. I'm sorry, I'm having to hold this yoke out of the way. In each case I've used the original mounting plate, and if I just take this one off, you should see, so it just comes off easily like that. If you look on the back, if you ignore the tape for now, but there's a square there, and that just latches onto this plate which I've mounted onto my frame. And you can see there's 2 tabs there. It's a very robust plate and 2 little latching tabs at the bottom. So to put it back on, it's just the reverse of that. Kind of easier if you can see it, but you can't at the minute. There you go, I can feel it there. So that just clicked on, and then it is, so I can take those off, mess about with them. Same with this one. So yeah, just that's a vote for the Dell monitors there. Now of course if I start these monitors up and they look like crap, I'm going to retract that recommendation. I'm a bit nervous about having these monitors exposed at the minute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to order up some acrylic sheets from plasticsheets.com. You can get them cut to order. If I get a 2mm acrylic sheet, 45 centimeters by 30, that'll cost me about £2, a bit less than that. And if I get 2 of those, and then I can just fix those over the front of the monitor, just to be a bit of protection for the screen. Of course, again, what you might choose to do is buy a touch screen for this instead, which obviously will be more robust, but it will allow you to, especially using Air Manager for the gauges. A lot of the gauges are built to be driven by a touch screen. So for example, you know, we've got a gauge for the, I can't really show it to you, but the twin Otter autopilot panel. And in fact I'll try and show it to you. Where are we? Oh, it's not working. Okay. Alright, forget that. That was a bad idea. Because I've got the lights, all the lights going behind me, the tracker, I was confused. So forget that. So for example, the autopilot panel, I was saying, if you have that gauge displayed on the screen, if it was a touch screen, you just can press the buttons there. So that, you know, that would be a good option really. If I'd thought a bit more about this before I bought these screens, I might have considered buying a touch screen, but you know, it's somewhat more expensive. So what else? I've arranged these screens deliberately with a gap here and a small gap here. I did think about buttoning them up over there and leaving a big gap here, but what I've done is I've left a big enough gap to fit these 10cm wide panels in comfortably with just a little bit of slack. Now I've got 2 of those already. This is the one for the head-up display, which I may or may not continue to use. I've also got the one for the weather radar, same thing. Unless I want to specifically build another panel, you know, for example for the autopilot, I'll probably put those 2 existing panels back down here. And then this gap here, I thought if I discover I can't live with the seat position up there, maybe some other things, I can put a small line of components down here, so a couple of switches, a couple of rotary controls, and I can do that without really building an acrylic panel. I could probably just do that with a bit of MDF or something, paint it black. And again, that'll, you know, that'll contribute to the kind of seamless panel-like nature of this thing. I've yet to decide whether I'm going to put some sort of fascia over it. You know, that's a design, that's a major design decision really. I mean, I talked about touch screens. You know, if you're going to use the touchscreen approach, you wouldn't really want a fascia with cutouts for the dials. I think it'll look better if I was to do that. But the other thing is, you know, once you do that, you're really committing to a very specific layout and almost a specific aircraft, really. And I don't really want that. Well, I'm not sure if I want that or not, really. You know, using Air Manager and with these 2 screens here, one of the nice things about it is you can fly any aircraft you want, and you can completely customize those control panels for each different aircraft. So there it is. Next step is to get these things wired up. In fact, that's probably not the next step. I think what I'll need to do next is to make this adjustment to move the yoke forward. Then I'll power up the monitors, check the viewing angles, and then we're going to see what it looks like with the gauges on. So we'll see you there.